Gotcha, Rosemary.
Excuse me. Rosemary Gonzalez, out of Bakko Village.
Julie Greenwell, Sea Isle.
Boyd Carr, Isla del Sol.
Good morning, I'm Craig Vance with Terramar Beach.
Good morning, Peggy Sailor, Spanish Grant Beach.
I'm Tony Nims for News of West Beach.
Good morning, Peter Moss, Sandhill Shores. Dan Walsh, Spanish Grand Bayside.
Good morning, Bill Ferrari, Bermuda Beach.
John Lightfoot, Point St. Louis.
And I think we got everybody. Okay. Welcome. Good again. And okay, let's have a chance to introduce you to elected officials. First of all, County Commissioner Joe Giusti. Care to say anything, Joe? Care to say a few words if you want?
Real quick, I know mosquitoes have been terrible. I've gotten a few calls, but not as many as I thought I would, to be totally honest with you. Call that number when they're bad, the one they tell you to call, and then once you get in there to the recording, if you really want to talk to a person, hit like number 4. And that'll actually bring you into a person to talk to. They know it's a problem, but the automated system, they're averaging, well, right now about 600, well, just a couple of days ago it was only 100 a day because I guess the mosquitoes have reduced a little bit. But about 600 calls a day is what they're getting from the entire county. When they do start a spray cycle, it takes anywhere from 12 to 15 days to spray the whole county. That's why you see them one day and think, oh, they're not here anymore. Where'd they go? Where's our mosquito trucks? Where's 12 to 15 days to cover the whole county? And so that's the problem with it. In this year's budget, I added a new operator and hopefully a truck to go with it, along with a lot more algicide, the larvicide for the ditches. Because to me, that's the way to attack the problem, is in the ditches before the mosquitoes develop. It's not near as bad for the environment as the spray is, and so we're working toward doing more of that. I almost had John Marshall convinced to convert his airplane over to where it can drop the larvicide, because it can do that, but it has to be adjusted to do that every time he does it. And anyway, just keep all the stuff in your ditch, in your backyard. You know, make sure there's no standing water anywhere that you can help us with, because that really means a lot. So, thanks.
Always great to have you, Joe. Thank you so much. You're doing a great job for us. Let me introduce you to Constable Jimmy Fullen. Jimmy. Alderwoman from City of Jamaica Beach, Taz Jones, right here, and our camera specialist here. And our City Council member, Marie Robb. She's doing a great job. You get to read about her and take all the time.
Joe, you're not getting as many calls because we're all busy.
And let me see, have any other?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Candidate.
Who?
Terry.
Who?
Terry.
Oh. Candidate Terry Wilson. Yeah, I know. I wasn't up to the candidates yet. You want to say a few words, Terry?
Anyway, just Terry Leo Wilson. We did our forum last month, I think, at Wicked Palace, and most of you know me from there. I am speaking Wednesday at Galveston Republican Women's Club, if anyone's interested, at the Sam Lily, and I'll be speaking on my passion, which is education. So anyway, thanks so much, and hope to have your support in November.
Thanks, Terry. Any other candidates? Okay. Let's move on and see what else we got here. First, let me introduce you to, you're going to hear from her later on, the CEO of the Parks Board, Kelly DeShawn.
Kimberly.
Chief Operations Officer, Kimberly Danesi. Environmental Coordinator, Elizabeth Schneider. And I thought I saw Marty Fluke earlier. I don't know if he's here.
I don't believe so.
No? Oh, I saw, he was in here earlier. He's the chair of
He
the
came
Parks.
to make sure we were working.
Okay. And you are, so it's good. And Sally Bakko, you're gonna hear from her later on. And, okay, have I got everybody? Okay. Let's hear from Peggy Sailor about our corporate sponsor, Wellbe Financial.
Good morning, everyone. I want to take just a moment and tell you about Welby Financial. We became a corporate sponsor about 20 years ago when I first began to attend this organization. Welby Financial is a federal credit union. We are a $2.7 billion financial organization with 123,000 members. We have 20 branches. As you may know, we previously were known as the JSC Federal Credit Union. Johnson Space Center was our first sponsor. And as we have grown over the years and diversified, there was a decision by the board that we would look at rebranding ourselves. So after extensive deliberations and decisions and putting contracts in place, we are now Welby Financial. So over the next several months, you will see us changing out our signs. I will say that I am director and treasurer of the organization. And what I would respectfully ask of each of you, I understand the alliances to your financial organization. What I do hope, because the credit union is a membership-owned organization, and that's what makes us different from banks, where banks have shareholders and can go out and raise money. We in the credit union cannot. We depend on our membership and the dividends. And so to that end, each of our investors is a member. So if you have money in our credit union, you are a member. And it doesn't make any difference how much money you have in your accounts. You have one vote just like everybody else. So from a standpoint of a true representation standpoint, with our philosophy being people helping people, that's what we're all about. So I would ask that as you look at having business transactions and making decisions in your life, that you maximize your due diligence and look at all the options, and hopefully Welby Financial will be in the discussions. And if I could take a point of privilege and just diverge for just a moment, I bet you're surprised, but I bet you're not. So I would like to say that since this is Constitution Week and this is Constitution Day, I think in terms of our group and what voice we have in the city and in the region, and since I have stepped down or termed out from the Beach Maintenance Advisory Committee, I will say that over the past 6 years, there have been ample opportunities for me to represent you, and represent you from the standpoint of beach and bay issues, anything that has to do with the quality of our life. And as of right now, Jerry Mohn, Marie Robb, and I have termed out. Craig Vance, we're depending on this man, will be with us another year. But the process maybe has been finalized, I'm never quite sure, but at any rate, there will be new appointees on BMAC to represent the West End and WGIPOA. And so what I will say is I'm sure whoever will be appointed will be somebody we will know well, because they will be folks who have hopefully attended our WGIPOA meetings, are familiar with our issues, and have been with us over the years working different issues. So to the park board, to all of you, I thank you so much for I guess it's a privilege to represent you, and I hope that you agree that our voice should continue to be heard, and the park board has provided us an opportunity to be sure that we are heard in different forums, and for that I thank you. Jerry, I know you won't believe this, but I'm actually turning over the mic.
Give you a mic and you're dangerous. Thanks, Craig. Yeah.
I'm not turning over the mic. I'm so sorry. The most important part of all of this is when the team found out Jerry actually asked me to talk. So when they found out I was going to talk about Welby Financial, they prepared swag bags. We have like about 75 of them. They're back there against the wall. I would respectfully ask you, please pick up a swag bag. Pick up one for your neighbor. I do not want to carry them back with me, but I hope you will find that the few little informational pieces and gifts we have in there for you will help to remind you that we're there for you when you need us.
And the cash.
No, that was not an official statement. You can only wish, you can only hope, and that may happen someday. But on the other hand, talking about cash, for the first time this year, we declared a dividend for our members. And the reason for that was our way to thank our membership for staying with us through the rebranding process. And the total cost of the dividends was a little under $7 million that we gave back to our members. So we care about our members. This is it, Jerry.
I don't believe it.
I don't believe it. No. Thanks, Peggy. How about a nice hand for Peggy? She's just been great. All right, we'll move on and let's have approval by the board of the August 31 financials and the August 20th minutes.
Make a motion.
Peggy, of
Yes.
course. Where's Craig?
I'll second.
What happened? No, we got one here. Somebody made it. Okay. Let's move on to Marie Robb, District 6 happenings. Marie?
Good morning, everyone.
We voted.
Been a long day. And I'll have to say, my alarm didn't go off, and I was like, whoa, let's get ready to get over there. I have a big mouth, I could get away without a microphone. Anyway, things move forward at the city. And sadly, contrary to what you read in the newspaper or news releases from the city, we actually raised taxes 7%. Now, you won't feel it if you're homesteaded because of the state laws that exist. But if it is your second home, we have raised your taxes 7%. I fought hard and singularly by myself to try to get them to not raise the taxes, because there was a number of ways that we could still not cut our budget and put fees on things like short-term rentals, golf carts. There were a number of ways that we could have taken general fund money and covered it with fees from different areas that are tourist related without affecting the park board. But the city chose not to do that. So we're probably the most affected district since we have the most second homes. But it also affects all our businesses in town. So whether you're a small business or a large business, we have raised your property taxes 7%. And so when you look at the numbers, people get confused. The appraisals went up once again an astounding 20%. So you have to factor the rate with the appraisals. And part of what we're approving, of which I voted against, is that we have to say we are raising the city taxes 7%, which we did. But again, I was the lone soldier, so it's tough when you're in a room, and you have to have 4 votes to get something done. And even though we did shave a little off the budget, we could have very easily done a no net new revenue. And that will be my 100% goal for next year. Things continue to move forward. Matter of fact, tomorrow Sally and I will be heading to Washington on a lobbying effort that has to do with the coastal surge protection. We will be there through Tuesday. It's a group of the district, which you'll be updating you on later, as well as Houston and Greater Partnership. So hopefully we will be effective in getting the bill done, as well as working on appropriations. In the city, we continue to move forward. We have some meetings coming up with both the GLO and the Corps of Engineers, looking at how we can advance projects that we are looking at on the west end, which is the most critical part of the island. And we're working hand in hand with the different neighborhoods that have more critical issues than others to assure that we have open communication, transparency, and so forth. One of the good things in our budget is we have our capital improvement plan, which is a 5-year plan. And actually this time, and I always, things could always change over 5 years, but the majority of the projects were on the west end. And they were large projects. I'd like to say, oh, all your streets are getting done, but I'd be lying. But we are completely redoing the Pirates wastewater plant, and we are doing well-needed repairs on the Terramar wastewater plant, which out further west, we actually have capacity issues, and we know a lot of that is caused by I&I, which is inflow of seawater into our wastewater plant, which causes a lot of issues. Since we have had Trino Peraza take over Public Works, it's like heaven. He is amazing. You see street crews in your neighborhoods fixing potholes. We are actually, and I know I see him sitting right there, starting the roads in Bay Harbor are starting in the next 60 days. And I was talking about Bay Harbor with Trino the other day, and there's a gentleman who owns a lot there who used to work for TxDOT. And he said, I did this for 30 years, and if we just laid the black stuff, and so I shared that with Trino, and he goes, God, that's exactly what I'm thinking too. Because they had it weird in the plan that like they were only doing, which we tend to do throughout the city, north-south, not east-west. Well, Bay Harbor only has 7 roads, and there's only 5 east-west streets. And so I think we're gonna end up doing a total overlay of all the streets. But we have a number of projects going on. Please, when it comes to road issues and potholes, it's impossible for me to drive every road all the time. Please continue to call me if you have issues, because I can get things done faster than the normal calling where it goes to a secretary and then to someone. So my phone number, and I'm not finished yet, but is 409-256-4518. If you don't have it, and I will get back to you as quickly as possible. We are also going to start where we have roads actually sinking, some roads on the east end of the district in Lake Madeline and that area, as well as we're addressing pothole issues and just where asphalt has worn off throughout the entire district. Now that we have taxes over and whatnot, working back on the gas project, I kind of had to take my focus on that, and we are still working on moving that forward. Keith Gray, who was our fabulous Centerpoint representative, is now the head of our economic development group, the GEDP, which is a great move. But see, there's been 2 people who have been in Keith's spot since Keith left Centerpoint 30 days ago. So I'm still trying to put my finger, and it's nice because Keith is helping me, on who is actually going to be our contact. And it's funny, for some reason I could usually figure that out before the city, but I always share the information with the city. But speaking of statewide things, 3005, we continue to have flooding issues, especially at the front of neighborhoods. And we are taking some of the projects on ourselves as well as we finally got the phone numbers to the person who is now took Jamal's spot, who Jamal was our key contact. And they say they're going to be wrapping up the project somewhere in the next 3 months. But that's before we had a chance to address the issues. So if there is, like I'm aware at Pirates entrance, they get a small rain, they'll have a foot of water. We have an issue over here behind Marina Drive. So if I'm missing anybody's issue, different than your issue, we are still working on your issue, Dan. If anyone else is having a flooding issue as a result of the TxDOT project, please make me aware of it as soon as possible. I know y'all aren't shy about calling, but call me because that is coming to a wrap. Dan's issue, we will be laying pipes, and it's just where exactly those pipes are going to come out. They had an interesting issue in their neighborhood with flooding. Nobody ever finished the drain pipes when the neighborhood was developed, so they just stopped in the middle of the road. And even though a lot of homeowners knew it, I guess some people at the city knew it, but didn't tell new people coming in. But now everyone is working together, and we should have that completed in the next 60 days. At this point, I'm going to open it up to questions. Okay, sorry.
We have glasses, I see. So first of all, I applaud the 7% increase assessed value taxes, all great. Somehow there are, I guess,
Can you take the mic?
somehow or other, I guess my assessor missed the memo. Mine went up 200%. I appealed it. I got down 40%. It seems that these businesses, Airbnbs, are raising the prices of everything, but they're not necessarily getting taxed at a different rate than I am. So the question is, have you thought about taxing the businesses, the Airbnbs, as not second homes, but as businesses?
We cannot do that because of state regulations, but one thing we have been doing is we have been in communication with the folks at CAD. You could tax their inside property with property tax since it's used as a business. But even though it's a short-term rental, it's still considered residential by state rules.
Yeah, that's seriously broken. You can't compete as private-owned homes.
I know, and it's affecting our neighborhoods out here, but it is really affecting our inner city neighborhoods. And one of the things that, well, they when they really don't want to talk about it, they're like, oh, well, let Marie discuss that with the city and come back with a plan next time. I'm like, thanks, I'm glad we're all working together as a team. But one of the things in the inner city is in urban neighborhoods and in R3, they lowered the minimum lot size to 2,500. So what's happening now is we have investors coming in from all over the country, buying up 2 lots, making it into 6 short-term rentals, jacking up the prices, ruining a neighborhood, and people can no longer afford to live in the neighborhood. So at least we're now looking at the minimum lot size throughout the island, and I'm pro-development, I'm pro-business, I'm pro-property rights, but we lost 1% of our homesteads in this taxing year, and that's only going to continue to rise. So we have to take some kind of stand to keep our citizens. I mean, y'all, you're the most important thing that we have. And if it just, if the rest of the council wants to sit back and watch the island turn to nothing but short-term rentals, I'm not going to stand for it. And it's intriguing because we were always the short-term rental. It always worked out well, before bad players came in. But now, because of bad players, my neighborhoods are going R0 or deed restricting out short-term rentals, which is really a shame for companies like Danesi, who that's been their bread and butter and they do it very well. We never have any issues with their homes. But, you know, they understand that people just feel like, you know, every time a house goes for sale on my block, I pray, please God, don't let a rental buy it. Please don't let a rental buy it. And we've been lucky, knock wood. But I have another neighbor who lives between three, and they tend to be three that say occupancy 30 people in a 3-bedroom house. So it's an issue we can't ignore. Our council is very slow to move to things. So I do request you call the mayor. I mean, I have people now from all over the city. I'm actually looking at doing a citywide town hall meeting, because I'll listen to the people. I'm willing to take actions, and the other council people are going to have to start looking at this, because it is a big issue. It's a very big issue. Any good subjects? Thank you, everyone. And again, my phone number is 409-256-4518. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bree. You're doing a great job for the West End. Thank you. I don't think we're going to have a police report. I don't think Lieutenant Schaun Migues is not here, unless I missed him out there. But let's go on to Sally Bakko, give a Gulf Coast Protection District. She always has some great news. Thanks, Sally.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sally Bakko. I'm the Director of Policy and Governmental Relations for the City of Galveston, but I'm here with you this morning in my role as a board member with the Gulf Coast Protection District to give you an update on what's happening with GCPD. We had a meeting on September 14th, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers came in to give us a report on where they are with the Coastal Texas study. And right now they're looking at developing a design agreement to have that in place for the eco restoration system portion of the project, specifically for Follett's Island. Of course, what we're waiting for is authorization for the Coastal Texas study project. So where are we on that? Well, for what is typically a bipartisan bill, the Water Resources Development Act, we have two versions, the House version and the Senate version. We're waiting for conferees to reconcile those differences and hopefully get a final bill to the president. The difficulty is time. Right now, we have the end of the fiscal year starting September 30th for the federal government. That always gets to be a rather ugly time because Congress has not passed one appropriations bill. So what is going to be required is a continuing resolution to keep the government funded until they can come to an agreement on a broader, what they call omnibus appropriations bill for fiscal year 23 that starts October 1st. Now, there's a lot of disagreement on how long should that continuing resolution go. Many have discussed the middle of December. Now, why does this matter for the Water Resources Development Act and the Coastal Texas study? Well, to get WRDA to the floor is a matter of difficulty sometimes when you run into these kind of intense discussions on budget and appropriations. However, so the likelihood of the bill reaching the president by the end of September probably is not great, but I have heard that a possibility could be attaching the WRDA bill to the fiscal year 2023 appropriations. So that would be very good because that's a must-pass piece of legislation. Now remember, authorization is not money. So what the Corps has told us is, you know, even still, they are making a strong case to headquarters about the $100 million that they would like for the first year for the Coastal Texas project. This is to really actually get the structure, an organization that's gonna be focused on this project established. So there's gonna be a lot of staffing and ramping up, both hiring and contractual. And they are in those discussions with headquarters. Meanwhile, they are in the process of preparing a memorandum of understanding for the Gulf Coast Protection District Board to consider and execute. This MOU will help us take credit for in-kind work that can count towards our non-federal share. Remember, this is a non-federal share, not a local share, a non-federal share. So meanwhile, we are going to be communicating with legislators on this non-federal share as well, but being able to take advantage of any in-kind work is really essential in that MOU. Having that in place immediately will be really helpful. The Corps is going to be holding their fall stakeholder partnering forum on October 6th, and that will be the day before the American Shore and Beach Preservation Association will have their meeting on the 7th. One other item that they briefed us on was their discussions with iStorm, which is the international networking organization. They are pursuing personnel exchange program with the Netherlands. We would be sending operational staff to the Netherlands, and the Netherlands would be sending us design and construction experts to work in Galveston, so they're very excited about that. Councilmember Robb mentioned the trip that we're going to DC on tomorrow. Senator Taylor's joining us, as well as Mayor Bechtel, who is our GCPD board chair, and our vice chair, BAHEP, Robert Mitchell, executive director, and Nicole Sundstrom, who is our executive director. In addition, we're going to have representatives from Baytran and the Greater Houston Partnership. Mayor Carl Joyner, King's mayor, will be joining us, as well as Lyondell Bassel. One other item, real briefly, because I know you're anxious to hear Kelly and not me anymore. But one quick item that I think is particularly important for you to hear is we had our first sequencing meeting with the Corps at the end of August. And this is important because they're looking at the Coastal Texas project and the three major projects involved in that, meaning the gate system, the gate system, the dune system, the ring barrier, the eco restoration project, and what order and timing of how that's going to occur. And what I've been advocating for very strongly is moving up the dune system. The dune system is something that could happen relatively quickly in comparison to the other aspects of this project, which means we have something demonstrable to show to both our state legislature and members in Congress as we pursue further funding. So right now, what we're looking at in their initial sequencing was obviously sand inventory and sourcing, which would take approximately a year. The dune system is going to require a supplemental NEPA, National Environmental Protection Act assessment. And they had the design and construction of the dune system kind of out to year 8 or 9. So what we're trying to do is move that up, and I think we have had some success in our discussions. So we're watching this very closely, and we'll be working hard to get that moved up as much as possible. There's a lot of advantages, like I said, to being able to demonstrate some real flood protection, surge protection through that dune system. Not that the ecosystem protection isn't important too, it's just, you know what I'm saying. So Anyway, that is my report. Next month I'll have a lot to share with you on our trip. We're going to be talking about not just authorization, but our main focus is going to be on appropriations. We're going to meet with Texas delegation members who sit on appropriations, as well as members outside of the state that sit on appropriations. Our first meeting is with Senator Hyde Smith from Mississippi, for example. We're also meeting with representatives of the National Association of Manufacturers and the American Petroleum Institute and the American Fuel and Petroleum Association. These national organizations are really key because they become our advocate and messenger when we can't be in DC, and they present a national supply chain need for this project, which is the argument that we're making for the urgency of getting this project approved. And of course, we're also working with our own chamber and chambers in the state to try and enlist business organizations, and hopefully we can get the U.S. Chamber involved as well. So, anyone has any questions?
Sally, I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation. Remind me, was the sequencing meeting the same one as the meeting where Senator Ted Cruz attended?
No, that was a
Separate.
separate.
Okay.
That was a separate meeting.
Okay.
And let me also advise you, this was the opening sequencing. There's going to be several of these. So stay tuned.
Thank you.
Great report again, Sally. Thanks so much. I saw Lieutenant Migues come in. Schaun?
Stuck in the bag. We do that sometimes. Keep everybody on their toes.
Glad you're here. Thanks.
Good morning. How's everyone doing this morning? Actually, here with some numbers I wanted to report to you guys. As of 3 o'clock yesterday, our new DWI initiative in the city, we've already apprehended 82 offenders, and that's since its inception last month. So those guys are out there hard and they're working, and that kind of goes to illustrate, like I told y'all last week, last month, for every person that we stop, there's 15 more that drive by us that need to get off the road. So we're continuing our efforts there, and we are making some headway there. And I don't know if anybody's driven down Seawall lately, but we have the beaches back at least for a couple of months. So finally got to take my kids to the beach, and it was nice and tranquil. Has the golf cart situation improved any on the West End, or are we still having issues in, was it Sea Isle with the big off-road buggies going down the beach? Anybody?
I mean, we still occasionally have the cars, or that we have cars, golf carts, buggies on the beach.
Okay.
But I think people have gotten very good about towing them non-emergency. And as long as you guys write tickets, we can get it stopped.
Oh yeah, we do have some ticket writing guys out there, so it's a good thing. And then just to follow up from last meeting, I know there were some concerns about U-turns on the west end of the seawall. There is an ordinance in place that U-turns are not allowed from, I believe it's 6th Street all the way to 103rd. However, like I told y'all, past 61st Street, there are no U-turn markings, and the road is actually striped so that you can make a left turn, which includes a U-turn, as long as you do it within accordance to state law, which is you have to be over 500 feet from an oncoming vehicle and such. So as far as U-turns on the west end of the seawall, we really cannot address that until there's signage. So that's where we're at on that. Anything new? Yes, ma'am.
I know we had a rash of car break-ins and so forth. How's that going?
Well, I'm not gonna lie to you, we had another rash of them this morning. That's a hard one. It's hard to catch. It's hard to stop. We have made some arrests of some guys that have been involved in stuff like that. We actually had it's called jugging. We actually got some guys that were watching the Bank of America over on 61st Street, and they were smart enough to try it 2 days in a row, and we caught them. A lot of times it's people coming down from Houston, and a very common tactic, especially then you're gonna see it now. It was on the seawall a lot, now you're gonna see it start shifting toward hotel parking lots again. And what'll happen is they'll show up in a car, they'll drop somebody off, or two somebodies. They'll walk around and figure out who left the person view, or an iPad, or which cars are unlocked. They'll get picked up at the end of the street, and they'll give it a little bit of time, and they'll loop back around, and they'll stop, and they'll hit every car that they've marked. I mean, or that they've mentally remembered that there's something here. And the majority of the time, that's what they're going after. Catalytic converter thefts, we did have one this morning, but for the most part, those have been going down on the island. We've actually caught several and busted up several of those rings. Again, off the island. I mean, it's South Houston is preying on Galveston. That's kind of where we're at.
And we do see that in our neighborhoods as well. I know we've had it in Lake Madeline and Camp Beachy. We've had it in Pirates Cove. And you can see people a lot of times pick them up on their camera. And I can't remember which of my neighborhoods it was, but again, someone saw someone in a car driving around parked under a house that wasn't, and they went out and investigated it themselves. Please do not do that. Please call 911 in that situation, because people in the neighborhood that shouldn't be there, you going out by yourself and checking it out, and you could end up dead. It is not a good thing to do, and I hope you will drive that point forward.
Call us, we're there. I mean, that's, please, I will say this, I'll get to you in just a second. The magic word to not say over the phone to dispatcher is, yes, Galveston Police, this car does not belong in this neighborhood. I don't recognize them. Do not start the call with that, please. It kind of drops it to a lower priority. Just because you don't recognize a car or you don't recognize somebody, they could be there to visit. Everyone has a legal right to, they could be just driving around to look and see what houses on the west end look like. Please let them know what they're doing is suspicious. Like, hey, they're getting out and walking behind people's boats. They're pulling on kayaks, whatever that is. We can articulate that into, oh, it sounds like they may be trying to steal something, and kind of jumps the priority up. But if we receive a phone call that, there's a car driving around, well, there's a lot of cars driving around. Yes, sir.
What do I tell my wife about the jugging into Bank of America, how to protect yourself when she goes? I watch out for it because I know.
So the way that this works and the way that this tactic works is they'll sit outside and wait for people to come out with big envelopes. We had one happen, and a lady, it was like $500, but it was all in ones. So it looked like she had a whole lot of money, and she drove to Academy to run in. I think she was getting fishing lures for her husband or something, and came out in the middle of it going on. So what they'll do is they'll wait, and when they think they've got somebody with a lot of money, they'll follow them around town, and then once they park to run in and go drop a letter off at the post office or whatever, they'll smash the window, grab the envelope, and run.
So just protect yourself by
Just pay attention to your surroundings, number one, and if you're gonna take out a large amount of money, put it in your purse, please, or pocket. Don't walk out of the bank going, "Ooh, that was great overtime this week." That's a bad idea. If you just don't advertise, and that's, if you walk in and walk out, don't keep it in the bank envelopes and set that on your dashboard. That's a clue. It's just. And we've had people do that not thinking, and the reason why is because for the most part, crime's mostly under control. But we're really good about crime suppression on the island, and so people come down here and they feel safe and they feel comfortable. I mean, the reality is for car break-ins, the most likely place your car is to be burglarized is when you're at church or when you're at home. And the reason why is this: how many people have locked their doors and make sure their doors are locked when they go to Kroger? Show of hands. And how many of us have found their car unlocked in their driveway? I know I have. Get tired, mowing the grass. Ooh, I left something in my truck, didn't quite lock, because you're at home and you feel comfortable. And it's the same thing when you're in your worship services. And believe it or not, those are two places that thieves actually really target, because that's when we're kind of relaxing and we're in our safe zones. So just lock your doors. Don't leave anything in plain sight. don't walk around like you just won Wheel of Fortune waving a bunch of money around, and it should be all right. Yes, sir.
Do you know if they've made any progress filling the open office or slots in the police department?
Yes, we've actually taken on a few more lateral transfers, and we have gotten some really good officers from some other agencies, and we've been successful in that realm, and we're pushing hard for laterals. I'm happy to say that our cadets that started with us, that are still on track to graduate in December, and we still have all of them so far. So that's another, I think, 15 or 16 that are down the way. Now, they're not gonna be on their own until probably spring break of next year, or pushing into the summer, but they're there. We need them. Unfortunately, well, depends on how you look at it. We have a couple retirements coming up, so we are gonna have some more vacancies with that. But I'm happy for those guys that have made it and served their time. We're moving. It's just, like I said, it takes a little bit of time to get going.
What is the net effect of all of this? How many officers are we going to be increasing the force with?
I think
Approximately.
approximately, I'd say there should be an additional 20 on the street by next spring, next summer. Now, we may lose 2 or 3 in the process of that, but we're pulling them in as quick as we can. I know one of the sergeants that's assigned to my watch has actually been pulled twice now to go to backgrounds. So we're pulling supervisors from watches that are very skilled at doing backgrounds to do the backgrounds and get people through and root out anything that would preclude them from being a police officer.
Schaun, how long are y'all backgrounds taking right now?
I'd say a couple weeks per person, but I mean, you can kind of overlap and do. I haven't done them in the past. I know I can start one, and while I'm waiting on a phone call, I can do that same portion of that process with another one. So we're looking at 2 to 3 weeks, but we're going really in depth. One of the things the state has done with TCOL is they've instituted a program for that's electronically. Anytime you apply to a police department, there's a record that you applied to that police department. Well, now you have to go through TCOL, and that's part of the checkoff of the background sheet. So it's become a repository of, hey, here's where everybody's applied. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing. It's a good thing because if you forgot to leave out that you applied for these other 5 departments that didn't want to touch you with a 10-foot pole, that's kind of an indicator there may be something wrong. The downside is sometimes kids are really excited to become a police officer, so they'll apply everywhere, and you log in and you're like, dear Lord, this boy's applied at 30 different police agencies. So then you're at a point where, is he just trying to get a job, or is he gonna work for 2 years and be gone? Or we'll still go through the background, but there's a little more scrutiny on that end. Anybody on board? All right.
Thanks so much, Schaun, for coming here. Okay. One who doesn't need any introduction is our CEO from the Parks Board, Kelly DeShawn.
Thank you. Hello, good morning. Nice to see all of you. I have a couple of business items here this morning. First off, the Park Board is in a little bit of flux. We've just recently had 2 new trustees appointed. You all know perhaps one of them, Kimberly Guido, has recently been appointed to the Park Board, a West Ender realtor here with Sand and Sea, and I hope that if you haven't known Kimberly that you'll get to know her and she'll be a conduit for you. She's also going to sit on the committee that was mentioned, our Beach Maintenance Advisory Committee, that is the committee that oversees all of our beach activities. So if you've got commentary, Kimberly will be a great person for you to funnel that through. The other person is a man named Jeff Ossenkoff. If you haven't been down to the Tremont lately, he's the new manager down there, making a lot of great changes. He's most recently in from Austin, bought property here in Galveston, really committed to the community, and excited to have him. I have to say, I've worked with a lot of hotel companies, and I was really distraught when Mitchell started to liquidate their assets, because the Mitchell company was a great company to have in your community because they gave a lot back to the community. But I have to say, this group that bought the Tremont, they are also equally committed to community development, are investing in that. And so I think you'll see a lot of that from them as well, and enjoy their representation on the board. Unfortunately, shortly as well. We've got some folks terming out. I'll tell you, I've been with the park board now for 11 years. And when I got here, the very first day, my very first meeting, and they used to meet at 8:30 in the morning, was the Beach Maintenance Advisory Committee on a Friday morning. And I started on a Friday morning, and I walked in the room, and there was Jerry Mohn, who had started the Beach Maintenance Advisory Committee, and hopefully another woman that you're familiar with, Claire Reiswerk. Those, and a third person, Captain Robert Webster, may he rest in peace, were the three folks who came to the park board and said, hey, we really need to have an effort under tourism that is concerned about the beaches. And that's where the idea of the Beach Maintenance Advisory Committee started. The park board really values committee input. We run 5 community-based committees. We have 80 volunteers that work with us. If you've sat through some of these 2.5 hour meetings, it is a commitment, but the time that you give on that, hopefully you see it through the processes and the programs that we've been instituting. It was actually BMAC that, and it might have actually been Jerry himself, who said to me, hey, we can get that sand that the Army Corps of Engineers is dredging up and we can put that on the beach. And I said, we can? And he said, yeah, we just got to go up to Washington. Go get them, Sally. And there we went to Washington. Both Mr. Mohn and Councilmember Robb have been on several junkets with me up to DC, and that citizen participation is so important. I get paid to do what I do, and I love to do what I do on your behalf, but when citizens give voluntary time and spend their own money to make these types of trips and go up there and speak to our elected officials, it carries a lot of weight. And especially when it's the same faces year over year. We would walk into Representative Weber's office, and he knew already, of course, Mr. Mohn and Council Member Robb, and that made my job so much easier as a technocrat about what I was going to tee up. After we've been running BMAC, I think BMAC is probably 20 years old by now. I won't date you, Jerry. I know you're trying to keep that hidden. But at some point we decided we needed to put term limits on the committees and allow new people to come in and give it a chance. So after Jerry had been on there for a full 15 years probably, we said, okay, we're going to give you term limits. You got 6 more. And now we've come to the end of that 6 years. So one of the things I'm here this morning to do is to give an expression of appreciation. We did this formally already for Peggy Zahler in our meeting, and are very appreciative to you, Peggy, but also Jerry. The Beach Maintenance Advisory Committee would not be a part of this community. Babes Beach, the work we've done on the West End, the work we've done on the seawall, would not be a reality, sir, if you had not been sitting in the room and pushing us forward and telling us things that we could do that we didn't even know we could do. So on behalf of the Park Board of Trustees and the community of the city of Galveston, I thank you for your community service, sir. And I'm not going to say it how she said it, but I'm going to say you don't have a better representation than Councilmember Robb, because she is vocal. And when she uses a mic, it comes out beautifully. Councilmember, thank you for all you do, not only as a committee member, but as our council. It was really fun to hear Sally Bakko talk, because these big projects, when you work on them, they take years to pull together. They really do. But if you're consistent about your actions and we're unified in how we do it, we can make big impacts. And I can see that Sally and the councilwoman and the district are on to make big movements, and that's important because all of these pieces are going to come together. We're going to talk about 3 things this morning, and so I'm going to pass the mic quickly to Kimberly Danesi, our Chief Operations Officer, for her to give the first piece of it.
Thank you, Kelly. It's an honor to be here this morning. Thank you, board. Thank you, members of WGIPOA, for allowing me to speak to you today. I am a West Ender, and I am gifted with the ability to help manage your beaches, and it's something that I get excited about every single day. And this morning I'm here to talk to you about 2 major projects that are happening here on the West End. The first one you would have heard me speak about in the past when I've come to visit WGIPOA, and that is where we are placing sand in front of the Delanera stretch of the seawall. So for those of you who may not be familiar with that stretch of seawall, it's about half a mile. It's actually not the seawall, it's the beaches. from the terminus of the seawall to just past Delanera RV Park. So it's right there at the end of the seawall. Now, we placed sand there many, many years ago, and in 2018, Hurricane Harvey came to town and depleted some of that sand that was placed there on that beach. You'll also remember that we had some major storms come through recently that further depleted that beach, as well as the dune structure that existed there. We have a project in place with FEMA and the GLO to start placing some sand on that beach. Hopefully, let me look at my notes, I want to make sure that I get this right. They are in the process of construction right now, so sometime in, contracting. So sometime in October or November of this year, they're going to start placing sand on the beach. Now, you all would have seen the sand that we placed at Babes Beach this past summer. That was 608,000 cubic yards. This is a much smaller project. It's only about 120,000 cubic yards, so significantly smaller, but a smaller portion of the beach. And it's not going to include the dunes. And I know for some of you who are on that section of beach, that's probably a very discouraging statement, but I don't want you to be discouraged. That's just because Harvey didn't impact the dunes. We are still working to get a project with FEMA that would allow us to go in and make those repairs to the dune line. So when we place the sand, you're just gonna see it on the beach itself, not to the dunes, but rest assured we're working on that behind the scenes. That project will kick off, as I said, sometime in October or November, and the city of Galveston has asked that we complete that project by February of 2023, so you'll see that coming down the pipe. Moving along to more of the West End beaches, we've had a project that we've been working on, it feels like for quite some time, and there's a reason for that, and that's to place sand on the west end of the island. Initially, when this project was undertaken, it was going to go from the terminus of Delanera, where we have the project that I just spoke about, to 8 Mile Road. Now, with those storms that came in a couple of years ago, when we saw the depletion of the dunes and we saw the depletion of the beaches on the west end, we had some advocates. Councilwoman Robb was one of them, who stepped up and said, hey, can we take this project further? And so we were able to work with the city and the GLO, and we were able to get another grant through the GLO to extend that project from the terminus of Delanera all the way to 13 Mile Road. And just for perspective, that is terminus of seawall to right on the other side of the state park. So it doesn't include the state park, it ends right there when the state park starts. That's a tremendously large stretch of beach. That is huge. So the first phase of the project is going to be the engineering of that beach. Before we can place sand on it, we have to understand the profile, we have to understand how much sand we need to place, how we need to place it. So right now, the GLO is working to finalize the contract with the engineering firm, HDR, who's going to be overseeing that project. So that will take a couple more weeks to finalize the contract. Once they finalize the contract, they're gonna go into surveying. Surveying takes about 45 days, and then from there, they're going to move into the actual engineering. Now that's gonna take a lot longer. It's about 145 days. So the engineering, the design of the beach will take approximately a year, maybe a little less, and then we move into the construction side of it. Now, as Mrs. Bakko mentioned, you know, we're very particular about the sand that we're placing on our beaches because we want to make sure that it's correct for our environment, for the turtles and the birds that are here on the island. So the next stop will be, you know, finding a sand source for all of that sand. That'll take a little bit of time, but we are working behind the scenes to do that. In 2023, the park board will be looking to the GLO once again for KEPRA funds. Those are funds for the beaches to help us with construction. Now the GLO has said that they could fund this project to place the sand entirely, which means that there wouldn't be a local match required. And the way that they would do that is through a grant through KEPRA and Go Mesa, and it would be a Tier 1 Coastal Resiliency Master Plan project. That's huge. This is going to be a multi-million-dollar project. So to hear the state step up and say that they could get 100% funding on that is huge. So that is the update that I have for you today on the beaches. Would you like me to let Elizabeth talk, or should I? Yeah. Do you guys have any questions before I hand it over to my colleague? Yes, ma'am.
I just had a quick question. environmental, are there abbreviated environmental work that is going on for this project that would differ somehow from what would eventually be done for the Coastal Texas Study Project?
So if you didn't hear the question is there an abbreviated process for the environmental, we do environmental impact studies to understand how the placement of materials on the beaches are going to impact the birds and the plants and all of the animals that call the beaches home. And so the answer to that question is I don't think that this is going to require an additional permit because the park board already has our beach construction permit, and through that there is a biological assessment that's done, and we're issued a biological opinion. So that's why the park board, for those of you who don't know, why are we involved? If the state's paying for it, if the city's managing the beaches, why is the park board involved? We hold the federal permit, which includes the biological assessment that allows us to do construction on the beaches. You can't just go out there and start placing sand. You have to have a federal permit, and we're the institution that has that.
So that precludes you from having to do any supplemental?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes,
we do
ma'am.
project and impact statements, we do activity impact statements and.
Yeah.
I'm asking because that's a any-kind work opportunity for us, but apparently environmental is a sticking point.
It can be. It can definitely be a sticking point, and we've heard some conversations with U.S. Army Corps of Engineers recently on some other projects that we're aware of where they're saying, well, we want to get a biological assessment done, and so, you know, there are some surprises that pop in every now and then, but I don't suspect that would be the case with this project because we already have that permit. You will see in the news probably, or you'll hear through park board meetings, that we're in the process of updating that permit. It's a 5-year permit. We have to do that, but that's not putting this project at risk. We've already got that ball rolling. We've got money for that, and we're working on it right now with the Army Corps. Yes, sir.
Did I understand you to say that the funding is relatively assured? We don't have to start worrying about that once the design is done?
That's what they said to us, that they could 100% fund it. That is a big discussion point for the project and something that we are going to start firming up because, you know, can't do the project without the funds there. I was at a conference this week with my colleague Elizabeth and my colleague Cheryl Rozier, who oversees our project. David Green from the GLO was also there, and part of the reason that we were there at ASBPA, we missed you, Jerry, was to start to talk to folks about funding and understanding how we can get those dollars firmed up. So they usually don't make those statements unless they feel pretty confident about it. You know, they don't. I feel good about it. I don't want to stand here and say 100%, but I feel pretty good. Yes, sir.
The sourcing of the sand that you'll be starting in Delanera area in October, is that going to be piped in from barges or is that going to be trucked in?
That's a great question. I'm glad that you asked that question. So for those of you who didn't hear, he asked the source of the sand. Is it going to be something that's pumped in like we saw on Babes Beach? Are they going to truck it in? We actually called the GLO 2 weeks ago in anticipation of your question to get that answer. And they said, we are under contract and we have a gag order. We are not going to tell you. Until the contract has been finalized, we are not going to tell you how it's going to happen. The speculation based on what we've seen happen in the past is that it will be a truck haul because it's such a small volume. We believe that will be the case, but we've not been told yet. It's not our project. Again, we manage it because we manage that park, Delanera RV Park, and we have the construction permit, but it's a project that's funded by FEMA and the GLO, and so we don't necessarily have a seat at the table for those level of details. But as soon as we know, we will share that information.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On the portion that goes up to the beginning of the state park, do you know about how far that beach will be pushed out?
No, sir, that's a great question. You wanted to know how far the beach template was going to go out. So from where it sits now, how far is it going to go out to the water line, right? So that's the project that we're undergoing right now is the engineering. The engineering is going to define that. It's going to look at they're going to do surveys first to understand what the template looks like underwater, what they think that they need to have a sustained beach that will, you know, not be impacted too badly by normal tidal situations. We don't have the answer to that question yet. That's what we're going after. And that's why, you know, the GLO says, hey, we could fund it. We want to know how much sand you need first before we commit those dollars just to make sure that we have enough. So that is an answer that we'll be able to give in approximately a year. That's when we're gonna know the cubic yard of sand, and that's when we're gonna have an idea of the template that they're placing and how they're gonna place it. Yes, sir?
Is there a desired distance that you want?
No, you know, we've not worked on that section of beach before, so I don't have a strong opinion about it. I'm not an engineer. So it'll be the first time that aside from Delanera, that the park board has placed sand that far west, or that the island has placed sand that far west. It'll be interesting to see what they come up with, because even the template varies so much from 8 Mile to, you all know, to 13 Mile. You look at Pirates Beach, and they have a very narrow beach, and then you look at some of the other beaches, it's a bit deeper. So it's hard to say. It's hard to say. I wish I could give you that answer, but I'll come back in a year and I'll tell you. Yes, sir.
There was some consideration given to a test project just past the seawall to help break up the wave action and erosion. Where does that stand?
Yes, so he was talking about what we're calling the offshore breakwater. That is a structure that would sit just offshore, somewhere between Delanera and the end of the seawall. And I say somewhere because it's still under engineering right now. The park board worked with the Army Corps of Engineers, and they've just recently turned that project over to a third-party engineer that we hired called Baird. And they are investigating what type of structure we could place in the water offshore that would help slow down the rate of erosion at that end of the island. It is the highest rate of erosion right there, and it sits just on the other side of 3005, which is an evacuation route. So it's a very, very important part of the island. We are still moving forward with that project. Baird, our engineer that we hired, is working very closely with the Army Corps. We have some meetings coming up with them in the next couple of weeks where they're going to take it from approximately a 65% engineer design by the Army Corps to now Baird actually flushing it out to a full design, taking the recommendations from the Corps to build the design. And then the next phase will be, okay, we've got to work with some institutions to get funding, and we're currently in conversations with FEMA to help with funding of that project. That project won't be something that you see come to life next year. I think that the engineering will be finalized hopefully through the year next year, and then we'll start talking construction after that. It's an exciting project. That one's really cool. All right, great. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your time and allowing me to be here. I'm going to pass it over to Elizabeth Schneider with the park board.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Schneider. I appreciate the introduction, Mrs. Danesi. I'm here today to talk to you about our Leave No Trace ordinance collections from this season. Real quick, can you guys hear me in the way back? Wonderful. And then also two pilot projects we are working on in tune with our trash initiatives. First and foremost, we just closed the season for our Leave No Trace overnight collections. We go through spring break all the way to Labor Day, so from March until September. Historically, this ordinance was enacted in 2019 with the purpose of preventing any canopies and chairs and setups from being on the beach overnight. This is a potential safety and environmental hazard. With a high tide or wind, your canopy could end up in the surf or in the dunes. So this was brought about in 2019 after we saw a lot of this trash being left on the beach overnight. Historically, we've been getting about 1,500 items left on the beach overnight. This year, we just ended up with around 1,600. So we started off very strong with low numbers and things were looking good, but as the season progressed, so did our collections. We are constantly working towards informing people. We see a lot of the people that we collect the stuff from are from overnight, for rentals properties. And you know, we get phone calls that say, you know, you took our stuff from the beach. Why did you do that? And you know, we inform them of the ordinance and let them know, you know, we inform rental properties as well of this ordinance, and it's their job to inform you that you cannot leave your stuff on the beach overnight. We do not want to take it. So what you could do for us is inform people you know who are visiting, your friends and family, about the ordinance. Even in the off season, we continue to try to mitigate the amount of trash we see on the beach, which leads me to my next two topics. In tune with our trash initiatives we've been working on for the last few years, we have two pilot projects coming out. The first one is a beach ambassador program. So if you or anyone you know enjoy collecting trash on your morning walk, this is the program for you. It's an opportunity for us to provide you with resources, grabbers, bags, anything you may need, training, to collect the trash you see and inform the public about your observations. It also provides an opportunity for an open line of communication with myself and the park board to collect data on the trash that you are collecting and the observations of the trash you are seeing, so we may all be informed of to the best of our abilities about the problem. This program is actually opening up Monday morning. You will find an application on the park board website. Just brief information, but again, if you know anybody who would enjoy this program, I ask that you please let them know about this. And next, our free trash bag program. We are piloting 3 beautiful wooden boxes with signage allowing for free trash bags for the public. So say you're going to set up your canopy and your tent for the day, you can go ahead and visit one of these boxes and have a trash bag for your stay and to pick up any trash you may see on the beach as well. We'll have 3 of these boxes. We're hoping to see how they do and how the public reacts. Our first one will be at East Beach. Our next one will be east of the 61st Street Pier. And then lastly, one here on the west end in front of Isla del Sol. I encourage you to check out our bags. They are similar to what you would see an onion bag, but you would purchase your onions in a giant bag from an H-E-B or anywhere. But this program was brought about from the Nueces River Authority, the Up to You program. It's about putting responsibility back on the people who bring in the trash. As you guys know, we deal with trash that floats in, that flies in, and what people bring in as well. So it's coming from all angles, and we appreciate any help we can get. Monday morning, we will be launching a section on the Park Board website about all of our environmental initiatives. Again, things I spoke about previously, and the application for the Beach Ambassador program. So I encourage you to check it out Monday morning when it comes out. And I will leave my business cards over on this table over here. If you would like to talk trash anytime, I would greatly love to do so. So please reach out. And with that, I will turn the mic over to Mr. Schaun to give you some more park board updates. But yes, questions, yes sir.
What do you do with the 1,600 items you took off the beach?
That is a great question. Before any of us are even awake, they are disassembled and put into recycling. So right away, that's the first call we get. People say, you took my stuff off the beach, can I come pick it up? And I'm sorry to tell you, but we have already disassembled and it is in the metal recycling. So it goes right from there before we are all even awake at 5 a.m. Yes, sir.
Is there any move afoot within the park board or within the city of Galveston to start collecting money for permits to be able to access the beach with your vehicle, like say they do at a Surfside, because any given weekend you can go to 13 Mile Road and it is jam-packed with cars, and talk about trash. And my wife and I, she's handicapped, so we have a golf cart with the handicap stickers and everything on it, and we drive around and we pick stuff up all the time. But there are these people that are just throwing stuff out on the ground, and that type of stuff is just, it's really revolting. It really is. It's very unnerving too.
Yes, sir. It is very unnerving, as you say. We have seen, more trash than ever every year, and something that we're continuing to work on. But for those of you who didn't hear the question, it was in regards to vehicle traffic on the beaches. We ourselves cannot regulate that. That is the state of Texas who determines where you can drive onto the beaches. I will say it does make it easier on some ends to have the access points where you can drive on and park. It does consolidate the trash to quite a smaller area for us, but like I said, we're dealing with what washes in, what blows in off the island as well. So we are trying our very best, and we have great community members who care about this issue as well. It's our community and our island, and I know it's a big environmental issue. we have a great team in the Isla del Sol neighborhood called Clean Team 6. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of them, but they have a very clever name. And they have created their own initiative to, every morning these members are out there picking up trash. So
I can answer part of
Yes.
his question. So the city is working on their beach access plan, and our goal is to get all cars off the beach. We are looking at how we can achieve that with alternate parking areas, and we are actually, I think we have resubmitted one portion, but our goal is to have all cars off.
thank you, Councilman Robb. Yes, sir.
So taking the cars off the beach is just going to encourage people to carry the garbage there and leave it. How about, I know the police are incredibly overworking with vehicles and golf carts on the road, but how about if we start writing tickets for people who legally jump where it is, and maybe that would encourage people after a month or so that they wouldn't want to leave it there. Is that even possible? I mean, can you deputize people solely for the purpose of having trash tickets?
No, sir. Because we can't deputize anybody to write tickets for littering, because it's actually a state, not only local ordinance, but state law. And for that, you would have to be trained and sworn to be issued that ticket. Whereas parking tickets, parking was decriminalized a while back in the city, and that's why you can have civilian parking enforcement officers. And with littering, you'd almost have to have an officer right there, see them, chunk a baby diaper, hop in a car, and drive off. I mean, it's the time frame on that. It's like most of the people we get for littering, it's because they're oblivious to the fact that we're behind them and they're flicking cigarettes or tossing Coke cans or Sonic cups out the window. And I'm like, really? I'm right behind you. Pull over. So I mean, usually when we address littering, it's because it's right in front of us, unless it's like an illegal dumping situation where it's on a larger scale and we can set up cameras and surveillance. But I mean, littering is one of those hard ones. I mean, you have to be there when it happens.
Any other questions? Wonderful, thank you for your time today. I appreciate you. And again, I will turn it over to Mrs. Schaun for more updates.
This is the benefit of these kind of meetings. You know, we don't come up with these great ideas ourselves. The committee and the community comes up with them. Sally and I were over here talking about whether we could carve out state law for beaches maybe to have citizen tickets. We looked in Gulf Shores, Alabama. I think right now, Officer Migues, a ticket is $500 maybe in Galveston. Not a lot of them issued. In Gulf Shores, what they do is they have citizen tickets that are issued and they're $25. It's like a parking ticket. We realize at the park board that we need to go into compliance. We're not looking at GPD to do that, but we need to peel back the layers of some onions to be able to get there. In the meantime, we're trying to do what Elizabeth has indicated, lean into the volunteer efforts that all of you who walk the beaches every morning, thank you very much, do. You'll be able to pick up an onion bag, collect your stuff as you go down, leave it somewhere else, and the park board will pick it up. She didn't talk about it here, but she's also working with business ambassadors. We're going to work with businesses on the seawall and in town to see if they'll move away from plastic bags, from the wrap. We were asking everybody to put a trash can in their parking lot and some things like that. So we continue to evolve. Please continue to bring ideas forward to us. You know, this is really, and I was thinking about it as Sally was presenting, this is really the benefit of local government, where you have paid professionals working for elected and volunteer citizens. And maybe some of you who ran big companies can understand this sentiment, is that if you're sitting at the top and you're not working in the nuts and bolts of it, you can see a vision and you can say, go for that. Those of us who are working in the nuts and bolts of it are like, oh my God, there? I can't get there. But if you have somebody pushing you along, then you can get there. And this activity with the Gulf Coast Coastal District, I know I didn't get it all right, is really exciting because the GLO, who's working on the master plan for the 5 miles that goes from 8 Mile to 13 Mile, the width of those beaches is going to be taken into consideration because it's going to be part of the dune system. So all of those pieces are going to start coming together. If we're going to build a beach, we got to build it wide enough so we can build this dune system and have the runoff. And all of the entities that need to be in those conversations, the city, the park board, the Texas General Land Office, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, we're all at the table talking to each other and about these projects. And so it might take a while, government does take a while, but working on big, exciting things. I'm gonna round us, yes, Sally.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to make one quick comment because I just can't let this go. In those discussions, include the Gulf Coast Protection District, because I gotta tell you, there's gotta be a way we can address this environmental piece. Because what you're doing out to 13 Mile Road is just going to be huge for in-kind match. And that's gonna be huge for this island, being able to make that kind of contribution in kind non-federal match.
And just to put a price on it, I was waiting for Kimberly to do it. That's probably a $50 million project. We're estimating $10 million a mile for beach nourishment. So that'll be a big in-kind contribution. Last thing I'm going to round us up about and talk about is Babes Beach. I don't know if you've seen it in the news, maybe if you read the Galveston Daily News. What we've been talking about is that the park board, in the 11 years that I've been here, and I never saw this coming, took to court 2 local landowners. We've been working on Babes Beach since 2015. Texas state law says that if land has been submerged for 19.8 years, not 20 years, 19.8. If it's been submerged for 19.8 years, then it belongs to the state of Texas. And I haven't been on the island for more than 11 years, but when we pulled up the survey information, the geographic information, the academic information, and you pull the satellite imagery up, and the surveyors, and we took the survey, it indeed showed that 20 years ago, the stretch from 61st down to 103rd was underwater. And we began to work there. One of the reasons that we worked at Babes was when we started all of this work at BMAC, we went over to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and we said, how do we protect the West End? And literally what they said to me is, you got to address, and Jerry, you're going to remember this term, the big black hole. That's what we used to call Babes Beach before we called it Babes Beach, the big black hole. Because sand migration goes down the coast, and if there's an inlet, then it travels in, like in the Houston Ship Channel, and that's what we're dredging back out to put it back out on the coast. Or if there's an area where there's deficient sand, like 61st down to 103rd, it gets sucked in and it doesn't come back the other end. So they said, if you want to protect the West End, you got to fortify that area from 61st to 103rd, because that's going to allow sand migration to continue down to the West End. And I was really happy when I made the rounds around the room this morning, unsolicited, to hear some of that observation. Ever since you started working on Babes, we're seeing sediment, we're seeing sand down here more on the West End. So the way these big projects go is that you go in, the state throws what they call a coastal boundary line, and it's a survey, an average of 19.8 years of the mean high tide line. Where was the highest tide for 18 years? And indeed, when we looked at that, it came up against the riprap there on the seawall. And if there was a little bit of sand, it was the sand that was in the rocks that was there. And some of you might know that the county owns the first 47, all these numbers I know them, 47.5 feet in fee from the seawall out. The county owns that, bought it from those property owners when they put the seawall in the 1960s from 61st all the way down to 103rd. So any of that sand that was there, that was on county property and wasn't on private property. The way the process goes is that you have a survey out there, they throw the survey line, we send it over to the state of Texas, they publish it in the paper, they publish it in the Texas Register. If somebody is concerned about any property rights that are affected, there's an opportunity at that point for them to speak up and discuss that. No one spoke up. We laid sand down there in 2015. We came back and we did it in 2019. Thank you, I gotta get my details on this one. And then we came back and did it just now in 2021. And holy moly, when we laid down that last load of sand, it looked gorgeous, didn't it? It just looks beautiful. Somebody came out there and literally stuck a flag on it, and it said, "Come and take it." You know, the one with the rattlesnake on it? Come and take it. And there are a lot of places, you know, I've been working on the Texas coast now for 11 years, and it's not homogeneous. You can't say that what's in front of the seawall from 61st to 10th Street should be treated the same way as 61st to 103rd. Or what's at 103rd down to the west end is a little different. And what I mean by that, you got to go back in Texas history a little bit, is, you know, how recently was it done? So let me talk about the West End for a while. When I got here, severance had just happened, right? And there was this conversation about a big, new word for me, evulsive event. What the hell's an evulsive event? An evulsive event is something that comes by, right? Language that we all got introduced to, something that came by in one fell swoop, took out the beaches. And so yesterday where you had a backyard, oh my God, today you don't have a backyard. That's not a 20-year submersion, right? That's a big event that came one day or the next. And one of the results of severance is that state law was modified to say, wait a minute, state can't come in after a big evulsive event and suddenly claim that land as state land. You got to give it time to recuperate, to see if it's going to come back, to see how it naturally reestablished itself. And the law got changed, and that's what we're under right now, is a 3-year hiatus to see how that comes back. I'm not going to comment on whether 3 years is an appropriate time or not, or what should happen out of that. I'm talking about Babes, where that was under for 20 years, not for 3 years. Then you go down on the other side of the island, and I don't know if you all know Paredes. They've got a piece of property down there between Stewart Beach and East Beach. That's a different piece of property too, because when Paretta bought that property, they bought, or they were awarded, the rights of the land under the Gulf of Mexico, because it was the Spanish crown that they bought that land from. That's a different land deal than some of the land deals that were done over in front of Babes. And this is an interesting fact for you that I learned in court. All of the west end of the island was subdivided in a survey, Treble and something. Somebody might know it, Treble and something. Tremble, thank you. Kimberly's learning well, yes. And when they sold, they divided up the west end of the island during the Texas Revolution, because Texas was land rich and cash poor, and in order to finance the Texas Revolution, they sold the western end of Galveston to do that. And when they did it, they only sold the land to the high tide mark. And so as the high tide mark moves, then their property moves, which is different than Pareto, whose land deeds went underwater and was forever in perpetuity guaranteed those rights. So that's what I mean, that it's different as you move along the coast. So here we are, we're working on Babes. They come out, they plant a flag. And the Park Board seeks to be a law-abiding organization that is fair and transparent in the decisions that it makes. We laid down $75 million worth of taxpayer money on what we consider is state land. And so to have raised that out of the ocean and have somebody come and assert private property on that was a little jarring. What they wanted it for, and there's really just one property owner, he's dragged a couple others in with him, is he's asserting private property rights down there so that he can run a concession. He's making $1,000 a month on that concession, stated in court. We're not squabbling over those $1,000. We don't make enough money on those concessions down there that it's even going to pay the ticket for the law fees, the legal fees that we're incurring over there. That's not what we're concerned about. If it was just about operating the concessions, then we do what we've done on the seawall, on the historic seawall, where there has been private property, that when people say that's private property, we say, okay, we'll step back. But on Babes, we're going to stand on it, because that was taxpayer money that was used for it, and this is setting the precedent for all of this work we're about to do for the coastal district. If we're going down there and we're bringing these lands up out of the ocean with taxpayer money, and then we have to go back and compensate owners who lost their land rights 20 years ago, all of a sudden these structures that we're talking about, that cost is going to go up exponentially. And in my estimation, there's really no benefit for those landowners. You're south of the seawall. You can't build a structure on it. And what it's putting into jeopardy is the beach nourishment. You may or may not know that the Texas Constitution tells us emphatically you cannot spend public funds on private property. So if you suddenly came and declared that that's your private property, I'm sorry, we are prohibited from continuing to make improvements on that. And that was what we were taking to court, was our ability to continue to nourish that area out there, because we didn't want to lose that. We've got $23 million on the table right now that we're talking about to lay down in June. And this is going to be the big one, right? Because now we're going to jump Jimmy's on the pier. We're coming for you on the West End. All those West Enders or those BOIs that used to tell me, I used to drive off the end of the seawall. That's my goal. Drive off the end of the seawall. And that kind of vision, and the vision that Sally and her colleagues are bringing together, is put into jeopardy when folks come out and start making these types of assertions. So we went through the first round of it. We were not successful. We had asked for a temporary restraining order just to have the flag taken off the beach and have the operator come off. We were in Judge Grady's courtroom here in Galveston. She did a great job. She listened to us. These are private property rights in Texas, and so you got to step softly. The other kind of convoluted problem we're having right now, and you're going to understand this, Sally's going to understand this, and Councilmember Robb is going to understand this. Commissioner Bush ran and did not succeed in his bid for Attorney General at the state office. And so he's no longer engaged, I'm sorry to say. We're 4 or 5 months out from the elections. He's hesitant to make any big decisions that would compromise the next commissioner coming into the office. And so we're in this limbo time, that if we weren't in the limbo time, it would be really easy to pull this case forward and finalize it. But because we are, it makes it difficult. So what we're doing right now is we're pursuing these legal claims, and we are courting the 2 candidates on either side of the aisle to see who's going to pull forward. And I would say to you, and I'm not advocating for anyone, if you're not involved in the local political process about the Texas General Land Commissioner and you live on the West End, you should be. You should know who the candidates are. You should know what they stand for. And when they're coming to town, and Senator Buckingham, who's the presumptive candidate for the Republicans, will be in town next week for a skeet shoot. These are the times that we need to be talking in their ears and saying, if you become the commissioner, we need your attention here on Galveston Island, because this is the time to commit them to that. And if you're a Democrat, then it's Jay Clayburgh that's in there. The park board's talking to both of them in hopes to see who's going to come in next to secure that we've got that relationship so we can step forward. We've done a little bit of I call it a articulation on Babes, because we had the contract for Babes already and we were concerned about putting sand on private property. What we're going to do is that there's a stretch after Jimmy's on the pier that's all state land. So what we're going to do with this next one, historically what we've done is every time started at 61st, brought the whole template all the way down and see how far we can go. Instead of starting on 61st, we're going to start after Jimmy's on the pier, and we're going to come back down towards the West End. We can do that maybe once. Then we got to figure out what's going on back here on the other part of Babes Beach, so that we can come back and solidify that. Kimberly, and so let me show you the big picture. Kimberly talked, here's the seawall, here's the West End. Kimberly talked about shoreline protection right here, and then we're talking about wide beaches and double dunes down on the West End. We've got to finish Babes, stop it with this structure underwater that's going to hold the sand there and help to pack that sand into Babes, so then we can begin to build the beaches on the West End to stay. And this is a huge issue. Those of you who were involved in Severance remember that Severance project, what took that down was a private property discussion as well. It's a different private property discussion. Please don't confuse those two. It's a different type of discussion, but these are the same players. And just like the GLO said, we're done, and hasn't come back for 11 years on the West End, we don't want to have to reset Babes and wait to do that again. Because if we don't keep going until we get to the end and secure it with this breakwater system, then all of that work that we've done is going to float away. So I'll take some questions about that.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Has there been any communication or concern for all of the sand that is going to San Luis Pass? And we just fear that that's eventually going to be completely closed off.
Great question. She's asking about the sand at San Luis Pass, and as I mentioned, anytime the sand comes down the system, there's an inlet, it goes in there, it's going into San Luis, and the concern is maybe it begins to close down. We have longingly looked, and Marie will know this, at the San Luis Pass as a sand source for decades. We have not been given permission as of yet to mine out there. There'll be big environmental constraints around that we're gonna have to get around, but potentially that's a source of sand, but we've not been allowed for that yet. Sally.
Yeah. Where do we go from here with this case? Because yes, you articulated very well. It's giving me extreme heartburn because our renourishment efforts, once we get those double dune systems in place, that's renourishment every 6 or 7 years, with the Corps paying 50% and the non-federal share 50%. That is going to be a wonderful deal for Galveston, and this is really concerning.
So Sally's question is, how does this play out? Where do you go from here? And she's concerned because given the work that she's doing, all of that's going to depend upon federal and local or non-federal match, which is probably all government funding. Meaning, the short of that is, if we want to continue to nourish the beaches and we want the state or the federal government to pay for it, then we need to figure out this issue of the submerged rights. That was exactly, Sally, why we decided to move forward on it. And Ms. Guido is here, and I know she'll say this to you if you stand with her on the side. This was a hard decision for the Board of Trustees. How often does a local governmental entity sue its citizens? We're the Park Board of Trustees. We do tourism, we do beaches, we do fun stuff. That was a tough decision to come, and this is going to be some money that we're laying down. But it was exactly because of that issue of where do we go from here? How do we continue to nourish the beaches if we allow this private property assertion to come forward? That was why we felt so strongly about it, and that's why we're laying some money to resolve it. What has to happen in order for this to be successful is that the Texas General Land Office needs to come into the courtroom and say, this is state land. And that's what we're waiting for, and that's what we're banking on. And so if you are involved in the political system in Texas, I would ask that you get engaged with it now. Councilmember Robb, do you want the mic?
There is a differential though, and so I want to be clear, because we currently have the nourishment that happens from the end of the seawall to Delanera Park. And we were able to develop an easement that was acceptable to the state and to the federal government. So the issue on the west end, you could continue with nourishment on the west end with proper easements, which is a different issue than what's happening in front of the seawall. So the one doesn't really have to affect the other one. The city has been working on getting the sand from Babes Beach moved further west because we have a much more critical need because we don't have a seawall. So the lawsuit that's going on Babes Beach is a different lawsuit than what happened in Severance. So we could still move forward with West End nourishments, which none of this is ever easy. It takes years. But it's a completely different issue because the West End wasn't submerged land.
And actually, just to underscore that, it's really easy to say. When we came into Delanera, we worked on Delanera, that was storm response. There had been a big storm, that land had been affected, we were coming back to restore that land, and so that was an impulsive event that had happened, and we went back and we recognized that the property owners own that land. We said, we want to work on it, you guarantee that public has access, they signed easements for that. That's really different, talking to a homeowner who's just lost land and you still validating that land and getting easements, or talking to somebody who 20 years ago lost those rights to the land. Yes, sir.
So just to make sure, 20 years ago they took a write-off that they lost the property. They probably stopped paying taxes. Now that they got the property back, why don't we have them for back taxes or property improvement?
I think that if we are unsuccessful, that is probably what will happen next. And no, there is not, to my great surprise, there is not a great coordination between state, county, and local governance, yes. So when the state assumes those lands after 20 years, there's not a proactive action to take them off the tax rolls. Those property owners are paying $3.52 a year for that property. Still. Yes, sir.
Just as a question, in the Bay Beach case.
Yes, sir.
Is it a factual issue that the owner is saying it wasn't submerged for 19.8 years? Or is he acknowledging, yes, I'm legally challenging the concept of 19.8 years establishes the ownership?
No, they're moving along an argument. They're counting on the Texas General Land Office not coming into the courtroom, and they're standing on a technicality right now. And they're counting on the rhetoric that's coming out of there is that it shouldn't matter that I personally benefit when this benefit also accrues to everybody else. So that it shouldn't matter is what they're saying. Yes, we agree it was submerged. Yes, we know that that's true, but I've been paying taxes on it for 20 years of $3.52, and so I have some entitlement to that. And everybody else benefits too, so why can't I benefit from that? But really, at the end of the day, what they're counting on is that the GLO is not going to step into the office into the courtroom to defend public lands, and that is to be seen. That is to be seen. Fun, fun, fun. Ms. Guido, did you want to say anything to close us up? No. I put her on the spot. So she's been on the job for what, 2 months now, 60 days? She's drinking from a fire hose. It hasn't been easy. Sure appreciate, Kimberly and I and Elizabeth will be here for a while. If there was a question you wanted to ask and you didn't want to ask it from the group, please come up. We'll be back regularly, and thank you again for your time.
How about a nice round of applause? Now you can see why Marie, Peggy, and I enjoy being on the Beach Maintenance Advisory Committee with talent that the Parks Board has now. So thank you all for coming. Our next meeting is going to be October 22nd here, and our main presenter is going to be Congressman Randy Weber. So it should be a really good session. The bags.
Folks, as you leave, I would appreciate you picking up a Wilby Financial bag in the back, or bags for your neighbors and possible friends. Be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you again. When you heard about the sand nourishment project that's coming on to 13 Mile Road, the West End benefits, the entire West End benefits when the sand nourishment program. The littoral currents will carry that sand all the way down to St. Louis Pass. So thank you again, Parks Board, what you're doing there for the West End. Outside of that, Board, if there's nothing else, we are adjourned. Thanks to everybody again.